Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet, this cuff bracelet. I have a few different versions that I'm going to show you that I've done already, and I will put a list in the descriptions of the quantities of the materials that I've used for them. I would recommend to watch this video all the way through to the end before you start anything to make sure that you have the correct amount of materials for what you need, and just in case if I make a mistake, you don't want to get ahead of me. Okay, so let's begin. First, I'll tell you the materials I used for this bracelet here. Today, we're going to actually do this mini one just for time's sake, and also it's easier for me to make a smaller piece with the workspace that I'm using right now. So for this larger piece here, the full bracelet, if you wanted to do the full one, the outside pieces are all the same size, 16 gauge for the outside. You're going to want to use 14 inches of 16 gauge wire, 2 pieces, one for each side. The center is 18 gauge wire. On this one I used 10 inches. And then the wraparound wire right here, that is 26 gauge wire. And for this bracelet, I used 36 inches. I use the 26 gauge wire because it's small enough to slide down the center of these larger beads as we're going along. So for today, the one that I'm doing right now, this mini bracelet, I have for the center piece, the 18 gauge wire, I am using 7 inches of the 18 gauge wire for the center. Then for the 2 outside pieces, the 16 gauge wire, I am using 10 inches each, so 2 pieces of 10 inch 16 gauge wire. Then this wraparound wire, the 26 gauge, I am going to be using 24 inches. The tools that I'm going to be using are I like to use these for making my coils mostly, because the tip is very fine and it's easy to do, and you'll see that when I'm making the coils. I use these pliers. You'll see in the beginning what I use these for. And then these are the main pliers that you're going to be using throughout the whole project. That gets those big squares in there. And then these are the round nose pliers that I'm using. I like these specific ones because they have graduated sizes. You don't have to use this one. Use what you have. But I like how there's 6 different sizes on here. And I got these from Rio Grande several years ago, like over 10 years ago, but I'm pretty sure they still have them if you wanted to get them, if you're interested. These are my favorite pliers. Okay. You're also going to need some flush cutters. And you don't have to use these nylon job pliers. I like to use them, but you don't have to use them. That's personal preference. Okay, to get started, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the 18 gauge wire for the center piece. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take my round nose pliers. And I want to use this size right here, this third, not the smallest one, not the first or second, but the third size here. And you know, again, do what you want to do, whatever size you feel, and use whatever pliers you do. And sorry about the camera. This is my first tutorial ever, so hopefully it turns out okay. And then you can use, you know, whatever pliers you want to use. This is just what was closest to me. you want to have it on a bent angle so that it's like a balloon, straight up like a balloon. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside. For both of these 16 gauge wires that you have here, oh, let me show you the beads real quick here. These beads I have been trying to figure out what in the world to do with these beads for a very long time, especially these bigger ones. I found a tutorial on YouTube that I was watching by Lan Ann. I think that's how you say her name. And I was going to try and do that tutorial, but it was completely didn't work at all for these beads. So I ended up instead going with this pattern here, which is 100% different, completely different. So these are, I believe, these are 10 by 15 millimeter rondelles. These are 4 by 6 millimeter rondelles. I think these are called rondelles. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. Okay, so as I was saying, with this 16 gauge wire, I'm trying to go through this as quickly as I can. I've made this tutorial like 3 times already. My camera doesn't allow me to go past a certain amount of time, so I might have to do a second tutorial. Okay, so I made a spiral. I started it out, and then I'm coming in here, moving the pliers around. I personally like my spiral in this design to be closed. You can do whatever way you want it. Just have fun with it. And then just come around and just, it's getting kind of bent out of place. I'm gonna come in here. Takes more time to do this, but I don't want to risk scratching, marring up the wire here, especially this early of the design. Okay, just kind of come and grab it however you want to make your spiral. So I figure that looks about right. And then I want it closed, so I'm gonna kind of come in here and then squeeze it. So that's that. I feel like that's a little too bent up there, but it doesn't have to be super perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same. Pause this and do the same with the second. Okay, I did my second one and they're pretty much the same. The goal is that you want to have them to be, this is the way they're going to look, so you want them to look pretty close. So to try to keep your wires from getting out of control, I just kind of try to take my fingers and slide down and straighten them out a little bit. Okay, next thing you're going to do, don't worry too much about the way it looks on the top. The main goal here is to get these wires like this. So there's 3, and you want this wire to be in the center. You see that? Now I'm going to come over here and hold it right here so that the wires are laying flat. Well, as you add the wire, you'll figure it out as you're adding the wire. Okay, so you want to leave a little bit of a tail on this end with your 26 gauge wire, because you're going to need it for tucking in, hiding that wire later on. So you're going to come up here and you're going to wrap around the wire, keeping these other 3 wires flat, your base wires flat. Come around, making sure that the wires line up next to each other as you're going around. And then they should also be in the back. They should also be lined up in the back. Then what you want to do, see how they're trying to get tangled up here? Just kind of move them around a little bit so you can see what's going on. take your whatever pliers you're going to use. I'm going to use the nylon gel pliers. Squeeze it to make sure that it's nice. The wires are laying nice and flat next to each other. There's about 3 here, and actually here's where watching the video through first comes in handy. Before you do this part, it's actually easier. I'm going to try and slide. I'm going to start over. Okay, before you do that part, you want to come in here and you want to take some pliers, some with the smaller end, and you want this is going to keep like it's going down, like it's like your head looking down at your chest. And you're going to come in here and you're going to take the pliers right here and you're going to just bend it forward. You see how that is? I just bent it forward and then just kind of straighten that out so that it's nice and flat. I'm going to repeat the same thing with the other. When you're done, you should have 2 pieces that are pretty much the same. Then you're going to put the 3 beads, the 3 wires together like this. And then you're going to wrap around these 3 wires here, just like we did before. I'm going to pause this and come back. So what I had done was I just slid this off, and luckily I was able to just push it back on. Make sure that your wires are all where they're supposed to be though. With that one in the center. Okay, and here I've wrapped it around about, this is like my 4th time around, we'll say. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to see how many more times I need to wrap it. I'm going to take this and I'm going to come straight out. And it definitely needs to be wrapped a lot more. But that's okay. What I'm going to do here, before you pull this other one out, let's start wrapping, getting this one ready. I'm going to come in here, sorry about that noise, with these big flat nose pliers, and this is how you're going to shape it. You're going to come down, over, see how, notice how this, the pliers is resting against right there, and then you come in here, and if you have to kind of, this is kind of crooked, so I'm just going to kind of, there, straighten it out. Okay, come up here, again it's resting all the way against there for these specific beads. Sorry about that, the way my camera is set up. And it's not like really squared off enough, so I'm just gonna simply come in, gonna untangle this, so see it's kind of lopsided here. I'm just gonna come in and just bend it down a little bit. Well, it's just hard to do it from that way, but you get what I'm saying. See how I bent it down more? Now it's more even. Again, this should be resting up against here. Squeeze it and try to keep it as close to the tip as you can so that the sizes are pretty consistent. And then bend it back this way, and then just, you know, if you have to make any adjustments, I think that actually looks pretty good. That's what you would do. Okay, now I'm going to pause this and do the other side. Okay, hopefully you should have, your wires should pretty much look like this. Then the next step is to make sure, kind of go like this, push it up a little bit, make sure that you have enough wire wrapped around that neck there. And I'm thinking that I'm going to wrap it around a couple more times here. Okay, so it's wrapped around pretty good, about five or six times right there. Okay, next step you're gonna do is you want to kind of grab the center wire. I can move this out of my way, and you don't have to do this exactly this way, but I like to take my little wire here, this 26 gauge wire, and wrap it around the center wire just one time so that it kind of anchors it a little bit. You don't have to do that, but I just do it. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to, and not all of your beads are going to fit on here. You might have to have a bead reamer to open up the hole a little bit more, but this is why I use 26 gauge wire and not 24 gauge. 28 gauge you probably could use, but you would have to use a lot more. You have to wrap it around. It just seems more flimsy. Anyways, here's 26 gauge. And see, it doesn't want to go through. So I'm going to find, yeah, that doesn't want to go through. So what I have done is I have a little container here so I don't accidentally mix them up. These ones, the holes are too small. Okay, now here's one that it goes through. See, both wires are in there. And you just want to hold both of the wires tight up here so that it doesn't bunch up, and pull the wire down. When you get down here, it's a little tangled up there. See how that wire's, uh-oh, I have a little snag here. I'm gonna have to come out, and I had to get that off of there. That was, okay, let's do that again. Now that that wire's not in the way, it's on this wire. Now if you can see here how it's kind of bunched up, you got to make sure that that is not bunched up. I would bring the bead out a little bit and then pull tight on that 26 gauge wire and keep it tight while you push it down, and then pull it tight again to keep it from, and then this is definitely going to be tight, so you're aware when you push it in there together, it's tight. So now I'm going to take the 3 wires like this, and I'm going to wrap around 1, 2, 3 times, again making sure that the wires are neatly laying next to each other, and whatever pliers you're using, you can use your whatever pliers. I'm using my nylon pliers to do that. Press it down, make sure that these 3 wires are flat next to each other. Make sure you press that in so it's nice and tight. This is what I do. You can use your pliers, but for me it's faster and easier. You kind of just bring it out a little bit and just bring it with your thumbnail in there, bring it down to a straight across. Is that 90-degree angle there? Do the same thing on this side. Now it's straight across, okay? Keeping that wire back here out of your way. Now you're going to take the smaller bead, slide it on, and then you're going to just take this, you want to hold it so that you're holding just this bead and this right here. You don't want to be pushing on this, however way is comfortable. And then I grab the wire from out here. It's easier to actually get it to shape around the bead. Now here's a part that's kind of a little tricky. Is you want this when you bend it back, you want to keep this tight around here. If you want it loose, whatever. But if you want to keep it uniform and tight, you want, when you bend this back this way, you want this wire to be on this side of the wire. So I'm going to come up here, and you can use your pliers, but I actually found out that for me it's easier to come over here and use my nail and bend it where I want it to start bending. And see how it's loose? That means I bent it too soon. I'm going to bend it back up and grab some different pliers, and try to get in there. I'm going to separate these apart a little bit so that it's easier to grab onto the wire. And it takes some trial and error with this, a little bit of trial and error to get it just where you want it. And then you want to kind of see how it's all bent out. Just come in and bend it down where you want it. And then holding it like that, it's still a little loose. I'm going to pause this and go back in and try to, well, you see, just got to make it tighter. And then you don't want to bend this back and forth too many times though. And you don't have to be perfect. This is me being perfect, trying to be perfect for this. I'm looking at my beads now, not the camera, so hopefully this will still be visible for you. And you can see what I was doing there. Sorry, I had to go off the camera for a second because... And now... It's pretty good. Okay, so now gonna do the same thing on the other side. Come around, down, and then bend it where it needs to go. Okay, next thing you're gonna do is the same thing. You're going to have your wire, and you want to come around. This, I didn't put this through this bead because the hole is too small, and this bead is super small, so it doesn't really matter. The reason I put it through this bigger bead is because, see how it wraps around the back? When you do it on the bigger beads, it seems like it wants to kind of move around where it doesn't go, and it's just easier, I think. It looks better to me this way. Anyways, again, wrap it around 3 times, just like before. 1, 2, 3. Push it all together. Use whatever pliers you're using to flatten it. And then, again, come in, bend it like this. Or if you want to use your pliers to do that, it's just easier, I think, to do it this way. And then you repeat the process all over again. Just wanted to show you this little trick here. When you slide on after the first one, when you go to the next set and beyond, when you're pushing this bead on, you can just actually pretty much hold on to this 26 gauge wire and slide it straight down, and that actually, oh, and you might want to open these up just a little bit sometime when you're sliding that down. When you do that and then you get it in there, there's no bunching up of the wire. The wire just sits straight, stays right in there. I just figured out something is with this is if you kind of, after you bend it snug, if you kind of just pull it away like that, and then you come in with your pliers and you come on and you bend it about where you think it should be bent, you know, again, trial and error, and then you squeeze it back in. It's a little easier. And you can just kind of, after you get it bent where you want it, just kind of pull it back over as if you're doing it from the beginning, and then just kind of bend it back. Now, something with these little, with this here to keep in mind is when you're doing this, remember which side has, this is the back. So when you're doing your wrap, this came a little bit loose. Let me tighten that back up. That goes in the back. So this is the front, this is the back, just like that. So it's in the back. And then again, squeeze here, make sure everything's flat, wrap around 3 times, and continue with all the other steps. So when I got to this part and I kind of pulled it away, I thought, hey, you know what? If you put your pliers in right up against the opposite side of the wire, right there, and bend, it actually will bend it exactly where you want it to be bent. Perfect. And again, you see how those are right next to, just like that. So when you get to this part and you're making this, if you want to just kind of bend this off to the side out of your way while you're doing this, it kind of actually makes it a little easier to bend the wires quicker because it's not in the way. And then you just simply bend it right back. Okay, when you get to this point, first of all, I'd like to say I apologize if it seems like I'm rushing through this, but I can only record so much with my camera that I have. It only allows me to record for so long, and there are things I want to try to show you. So hopefully you'll be able to have gotten the idea by this point. As good as possible, hopefully as good as I can get you. Okay, anyways, so when we get to this point, the very last one, do not wrap this around. You want to snip off, leave about, I'm going to say at least maybe about 1.5 inches or so at the end. So I left about 1.5 inches on here, on the sides. The middle, I'm going to snip it down just a little bit more because I know I'm not going to need that much, and it'll be easier to see what I'm doing. Now on here, what your next goal is you want to make it look like this side. So you take your pliers and you bend it, leave yourself a little bit of a gap in there, bend it 90 degrees. You want it to be about the same amount of space that you had on this side, right here, for right here. I'm going to have to go on the other side and re-wrap that 26 gauge wire around because it looks kind of like it came a little loose throughout me doing this. It's a little sloppy. So, okay. And and I'm not going to bend it 100% like that. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to make your coils going down, just like on the other side. Make your coil. And then you just if you get to this point and you think, I think that's going to be like too much wire, then you come in with your flush cutters and you just snip a little bit off. Don't snip too much, because if you snip too much, you can't take it back. So just a little bit I snipped off. Come back in, try again. And okay, that looks, well, the same. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I have both of my coils here. They're decent. Now, if you look on this side, you see how that kind of got stuck in there. I'm just going to come over here and take a pliers and try to pull it out a little bit without messing it up. Just kind of do that. See how it's kind of coming out? I'm just going to keep doing that until it's out. Okay, so I just wiggled it around until it was out where it should be. Okay, and then you're going to make a loop on this side and bend it so that it looks the same as this. Okay, so make sure you bend this back first before you make your loop. Then you're going to finish it off. Wrap this around just like the other side and close it up. And as I was going around, I had to kind of go under and up so it lay right, and then go under and up so that it lays right. And then you want to come up here and squeeze it flat. You want to take this and you want to come around in here. You want to go up through here. First, actually, you want to find which side is your back side. And this is actually my back side here. I made a mistake with this bead here. I'm going to have to try and come back to it later on probably and get it, and just kind of keep doing this to get it so it's sticking out on the other side where it's supposed to be. Trying to be careful not to mar the wire when I'm doing it. Okay, anyways, I'll come back to that later. So go down. Where is the back side? Okay, here's the back side. So you want to take the wire from the back side, come down, and the reason you're doing it from the back side is because see how it's going to cross over, and you don't want it to be seen on the front side. So making sure everything is nice and neat, come down, then you're going to come around, and just like a sewing, you're going to come through here so that it comes around, pull it tight, flip it over, go through again, and just do that like maybe one more time. And you want it to end on the ugly side, or the back side I should say, because there's so much bead here, really it's no one's going to feel that. Anyways, you're going to come in, you're going to snip it, and then you're going to tuck it in. I think my kids... No, you just want to, I can't see the wire now, but tuck it in. I had to get up and walk away for a second, and I lost the wire that I was going to tuck. Nope, there it is. It's hiding. You can see it right here. There, it's hiding. That's actually fine the way it is. I just want to make sure that it's staying on there. And do the test. Make sure that it's not going to stab anyone. And the reason why I do it on this side is because if it's a little bit loose and it's on the correct on the outer part, it might snag on someone's like sweater or something. If you don't know there's a sharp part there, sometimes that can still happen, I noticed. Anyways, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now this will shut off on me without me knowing it, but that'll keep recording, but it won't tell me where it ends the video. I'm going to try and tell you before you wrap it. Now with this, I actually ended up getting 5 beads on here. So with that, 7 inches down the center and the 10 of the 18 gauge down the center, and then the 16 gauge 10 inches on the outside for each side, got 5 sections like perfectly, which is what I used for this one, my first one that I did. So what I said in the beginning about how much you need, wire you need, disregard that. This is how much you need for this piece. I would say maybe yeah, actually that worked out perfectly. Okay, so when you bend it, you can wrap it around something, an old pill bottle or whatever to shape it. Or what I usually do is I just kind of like gently bend it, and I'll show you that after I show you this other part. A little trick is, if you see how it looks like right here, you can leave it that way, and when it's laying on the wrist, it just is kind of straight like that. You can see how that looks. But I kind of, and this one's not completely done yet, but I'll have to go in and touch it up a little bit. But you see how it's resting on the wrist? The sides are kind of bent down. So you just grab your pliers and you find which is the side that's supposed to be showing, which is this side is my up side. I still got to fix this piece, so I'll do that later. Actually, I'm going to do it now. So with this wire being in the way, I was able to wiggle it so it came over the top, and now it's in the back. And because it's a little bit loose now, you can see there's a gap there. I'm just going to kind of bend it a little, twist it like that, press it in so that it stays back there. And you might have to play with it a little bit, but the general idea is if you twist it, it'll tighten it. Kind of go like this. There we go. See, what I did was I pulled this side down this way and this side down this way, so it ends it up like a lightning bolt almost, and that tightened it up perfectly. Okay, now let's get into this part here. You want to take your pliers and just on the very ends ends here a little bit, bend it down, gripping onto whatever you can grip onto to keep it from, and then you just do that all the way down, however way you can. Do it like that. Might be easier to do it this way and go up. But the thing is you want to make sure when you're doing that, you're actually bending the wire and not just, as you can see how it's kind of starting to twist these around. You don't want the wire twisted. You just want the wire bent. So just do that. I'll do that a little bit. I'm just doing that all the way down. And you can flip it over and do it this way. Whatever's easier. I can see what I'm doing. Bending it towards the bead so that it's bent. See how that one's bent? That one's not really bent. I mean, you don't have to do this step. This, to me, I just wanted to do it because I thought it gave it a little more dimension, or a little more natural lay. Looks a little more natural that way. I think it's pretty much bent most of the way around. And surprisingly, it didn't scratch up the wire when I was doing that. But you want to be careful that you don't scratch your wire when you're doing that. Maybe it's because this is like my fourth time doing that with these bracelets. My fourth try around. Maybe that's why, and I'm just getting a better grip on there. I don't know. Just lucky. Okay, that's pretty good. And I can play around with it more later on. So how I bent it was, I want this to be flat, first of all. See what I mean? How this is doing that. You don't want that to happen. But anyways, just kind of come in here and bend things around where you want it to be. Bend this out a little, bend that out a little, twist it this way a little, or whatever. So bend it whichever way you want to bend it until it lays the way you want it. Okay, you can come in here, and I like to bend these down a little bit. I feel like it just lays better on the wrist. It kind of wraps. It's easier to do it with the pliers to try and then it kind of come up a little bit and bend it down a little bit like that. See how it's got that little shape, the little C kind of shape, or cup, whatever. Do that on both sides. Then after you do that, you just kind of, you could wrap it around something, but I just like to freeform it. free wrap it because, or if you have a bracelet mandrel, I have one of those too. Mine is a big, huge clunking one. Big, huge, giant one. Very heavy. I need to get a different one. But you could do that. Just kind of, this is an oval shaped one, so wrap it around there. But these beads are so big, it kind of doesn't really, I don't like doing it with that. And then just test it out, see how it looks, how it lays on your wrist. And it's actually, I think, pretty good. Then you make your next part. And if you were making a cuff, you know, you would just come in here and just bend it more. I'm going to open this, unbend this a little bit because I'm pretending this is the cuff. And you just kind of shape it around like that until you get it where you want it. And then it should, I'm going to do it upside down so it's easier. See how it just kind of wraps around? And that's the cuff, how you did the cuff. Hopefully, you guys like this tutorial, and give me a thumbs up if you do. And I'll try and do one for this chain and the clasp here. Maybe comment if you want me to. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll just quickly tell you how I did this in case you don't really want to watch a tutorial. With the chain, basically it's 18 gauge wire, and the length is, I cut it at about just a little bit under 3 centimeters, because if you do it at 3 centimeters it's too long, but if you do it at 2.5 centimeters it's too short, depending on what wire you use, what pliers you use. I use these pliers, and I use this second size here, I believe. Yeah, I use that second size wire. You just make it like a figure 8, you know, wrap it around like that. You know, you make the wrap, put the bead on, wrap it around the other way, and then you make your chain. And then for the clasp, I just used, I think it was about 2.5 inches of 18 gauge wire. I made a wrap here, put the bead on, bent it back, came around with my pliers, with my round nose pliers. I used the same thickness of the pliers up here that I used on this loop on the bracelet. It's hard to see that, but that's what I did. Actually, I think I used one size bigger for that. And then I just kind of let it, just like an earring hook. And then when you get right below the bead here, just bend it down a little bit. But you want to have that little circly thing on there first before you bend it. Otherwise, it'll be hard. Or you can do it whichever way you want, but I don't remember. I'll try and do that another video later. But that's how I did that. And I don't know if I showed what this looks like on. It's pretty easy to get on. And you can wear it this way, possibly, if you really wanted to. So it looks like you have a two-tone bracelet. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention that I thought of with this is that you could also start with this bead instead for a different look. I think that would be cute. And of course, you know, maybe you could put some little crystals in here and the spaces in between. you know, whatever.